Judge Judy had seen people fake confidence. She had seen witnesses fake tears. She had even watched defendants rehearse entire stories before walking into her courtroom. But the morning Karen Whitmore walked into court wearing dark sunglasses, tapping a white cane across the floor, no one imagined that the smallest member of the courtroom would expose the biggest lie. The courtroom fell silent as Karen slowly made her way to the defendant's table. "I can't see anyone," she announced loudly. "So I hope everyone here remembers that lying to a blind woman is a crime." Several people in the gallery exchanged sympathetic looks. The plaintiff, Michael Harris, lowered his head without saying a word. Resting beside him was a small cardboard box containing what appeared to be nothing more than an old leather leash, a handful of receipts, and a faded photograph. Only Judge Judy seemed interested in the photograph. She glanced at it for less than a second before returning her attention to Karen. She said nothing. She didn't challenge Karen's condition. She didn't ask for medical records. She simply watched. And that made Karen smile. She mistook silence for belief. Before this story goes any further, make sure you're subscribed for more unforgettable courtroom dramas where truth always finds a way to the surface. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from, because this case is about to take a turn no one in that courtroom could possibly predict. What no one realized was that this lawsuit wasn't really about damaged property, as the paperwork suggested. It was about deception. And Judge Judy had already noticed something that Karen herself didn't realize she had revealed. Pay close attention to every movement from this point forward, because one instinctive reaction would soon change everything. According to the complaint, Michael Harris owned a small dog training business specializing in service animals. Karen claimed she had hired him to train a guide dog before discovering that the animal was dangerous and unfit for public use. She demanded a full refund and additional damages. Insisting the dog had lunged at her during a training session, Michael denied every accusation. He insisted the dog had never behaved aggressively. More importantly, he claimed Karen had never acted like someone who actually needed a guide dog. The courtroom clerk finished reading the case summary. Karen immediately lifted her chin. "This man is taking advantage of a disabled woman," she declared. "He thinks no one will believe me because I can't see." The words echoed through the room. Michael didn't interrupt. Instead, he quietly reached into the cardboard box and gently placed the worn leather leash on the plaintiff's table. Judge Judy noticed the way he handled it. Not carelessly, not dramatically, almost respectfully. Sometimes an ordinary object carries a story far heavier than anyone expects. Experienced judges know that real victims rarely rush to perform. They simply wait for the evidence to speak. Judge Judy finally looked toward Michael. "Mr. Harris," she said calmly, "is that the leash from the dog involved in this case?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And where is the dog now?" Michael hesitated outside the courtroom. Karen laughed. "Good. I don't want that animal anywhere near me." Judge Judy leaned back slightly. She didn't react to Karen's statement. Instead, she quietly made a note on the file already waiting on her bench before court had even begun. The bailiff noticed Karen didn't. Then Judge Judy asked one simple question. "Ms. Whitmore, how long have you been completely blind?" Karen answered instantly, "Since birth." Judge Judy nodded once, no expression, no follow-up. Just one quiet note written across the top page of her file. Karen smiled confidently, believing she had answered perfectly. She had no idea that, before court even started, Judge Judy had already reviewed documents that made that answer far more important than Karen could possibly understand. And outside the courtroom door, a highly trained service dog waited patiently beside its handler. Completely unaware that it was about to expose a lie no cross-examination ever could. The courtroom remained quiet after Judge Judy wrote her brief note. Karen stood with her white cane resting against the table, her dark glasses hiding any hint of emotion. To most people in the gallery, she looked vulnerable. To Judge Judy, she looked Prepared. There is a difference. People carrying the truth usually prepare their evidence. People carrying a lie often prepare their performance. Judge Judy folded her hands. Mr. Harris, she said, tell me how you first met Ms. Whitmore. Michael nodded respectfully. About 9 months ago, she contacted my training center. She said she had recently been matched with a Labrador that needed advanced guide work. She explained she had struggled to find a trainer experienced with visually impaired clients. Judge Judy listened carefully. And I scheduled an evaluation. Michael reached into the cardboard box and carefully removed a spiral notebook. Its pages were worn from constant use. My trainers document every session. He handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Judy. The notebook contained detailed observations. Gamins practiced progress reports, behavior scores, honor feedback. Everything was dated. Everything was signed. Judge Judy slowly turned each page. This is thorough. Michael nodded. We train service dogs, Your Honor. Documentation protects both the client and the animal. Karen gave a dismissive laugh. Anyone can write notes after the fact. Judge Judy didn't respond. Instead, she continued reading. Experienced judges understand that organized records often reveal habits, not just facts. One carefully prepared lie can imitate truth. Months of consistent documentation rarely can, Michael continued. From the very first session, something felt unusual. Judge Judy looked up. In what way? The dog wasn't confused. The client was. Several people in the gallery frowned. Michael quickly clarified. Guide dogs are trained to respond naturally to body position, cane technique, verbal cues, and environmental awareness. He paused. Karen kept giving commands that experienced blind handlers almost never give. Karen immediately interrupted. So now you're an expert on blindness? I'm an expert on guide dog behavior. Judge Judy held up one finger. No interruptions. Karen folded her arms. The confident wince remained in her voice, but something had changed. Her answers were becoming shorter, her interruptions more frequent. Bodies confess before mouths do. Judge Judy turned another page in the notebook, Michael continued. Sometimes she'd forget which hand she claimed she normally held the cane with. Other times she'd reach directly toward objects before the dog had guided her. Karen scoffed. Muscle memory. Judge Judy quietly wrote another note. Michael wasn't finished. The strangest moment happened during our 4th session. What happened? A tennis ball rolled across the training room. The courtroom became still. I didn't throw it. No one called attention to it. The dog ignored it because he was working. Michael looked directly at Judge Judy, but Karen turned her head and followed it with her eyes. Karen immediately shook her head. That's ridiculous. Michael remained calm. I thought maybe I imagined it, so I didn't accuse her. I simply made another note. Judge Judy found the page. There it was, Suction 4:11:18 a.m. Client visually tracked moving object. Observation noted. No conclusion reached. The handwriting matched every previous entry. The ink had aged naturally. Nothing appeared added later. Sometimes the smallest observation becomes the first crack in the biggest lie. Judge Judy looked toward Karen. Did this happen? No. You deny it completely? Absolutely. Judge Judy nodded once. No emotion, no argument. Just another quiet note. Then Michael reached into the cardboard box one final time. He removed the faded photograph Judge Judy had noticed the moment court began. It showed Karen smiling beside the same Labrador during an early training session. At first glance, it looked completely ordinary, until Judge Judy leaned slightly closer. There, reflected in the dark lenses of Karen's sunglasses, was something almost impossible to ignore. Karen's face lost a trace of color. Judge Judy didn't comment. Not yet. She simply placed the photograph beside the notebook, then she looked toward the courtroom door. Is the service dog still outside? Yes. Your Honor, the bailiff answered. Judge Judy nodded thoughtfully. Good. Karen tightened her grip on the white cane. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she looked genuinely uneasy. Because whatever Judge Judy had just decided, it involved the dog. Judge Judy did not immediately ask for the dog. She let the request linger in the courtroom, watching Karen far more closely than anyone else. Karen's fingers tightened around the white cane, not because someone had challenged her, because she didn't know what was coming next. Experienced judges understand that uncertainty is often more revealing than confrontation. People carrying the truth usually welcome evidence. People carrying deception fear evidence they cannot predict. Judge Judy looked back at the faded photograph resting on the bench. "Mr. Harris," she said calmly, "when was this picture taken?" "About 3 weeks into training." "And who took it?" "My assistant." "We photograph every guide dog graduation assessment," Karen interrupted. "That picture proves absolutely nothing." Judge Judy didn't look at her. "I'll decide what it proves." The courtroom fell silent again. Judge Judy lifted the photograph. "Interesting reflection." Karen swallowed. "What reflection?" "The one in your sunglasses." Karen's shoulders stiffened. Judge Judy placed the photograph beneath the courtroom document camera. The enlarged image appeared on the monitor. Most people focused on Karen and the Labrador. Judge Judy focused somewhere else. "In the right lens," she said quietly. The courtroom leaned forward. Reflected clearly in the sunglasses was a bright red training cone sitting nearly 20 feet away. Judge Judy spoke without emotion. "You stated under oath that you have been completely blind since birth." "That's correct, and yet this photograph shows your eyes directed precisely toward an object outside the frame." Karen immediately shook her head. "Coincidence." Michael remained silent. Judge Judy continued. "Perhaps." She wasn't finished. "The cone moved during this exercise, didn't it?" Michael nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We repositioned it several times while testing obstacle avoidance." Judge Judy looked back at Karen. "So either coincidence happened repeatedly," she paused, "or something else did." Karen shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're trying to imply." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking questions." Bodies confess before mouths do. Karen had entered the courtroom sitting perfectly still. Now her right foot tapped against the floor. "Agon, agon, agon." The rhythm was quick. Anxious Judge Judy noticed. So did the bailiff. The narrator watched the confidence slowly draining from Karen's face. The woman who had loudly declared, "I know my rights," now seemed far more interested in ending the questioning than answering it. Judge Judy closed the notebook. "Mr. Harris." "Yes, Your Honor?" "You mentioned the dog is outside." "Yes." "What is the dog's name?" "Atlas." "Has Atlas completed public access certification?" "He has." "And does he reliably respond to visually impaired handlers every day?" Judge Judy nodded. "Bring Atlas into the courtroom." Karen's face turned pale. "No." Her answer came so quickly that several people in the gallery turned toward her. Judge Judy looked up. "No?" "The dog makes me uncomfortable." "I thought he was aggressive." "He is." Michael quietly shook his head. Judge Judy continued calmly. "Certified guide dogs are trained to ignore nearly every distraction inside public buildings." Karen looked away. I just don't want him near me." Judge Judy leaned back. "Interesting. Real fear rarely appears when expected. Sometimes it arrives one question too early." A few moments later, the courtroom doors opened. Atlas entered beside Michael with calm, measured steps. The Labrador never barked, never pulled on the leash, never glanced toward the gallery. His focus remained exactly where years of training had taught him it should be. The room watched in complete silence. Karen gripped her cane so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Judge Judy observed every movement. Then she asked one simple question that changed the atmosphere completely. "Ms. Whitmore." She paused just long enough for the silence to settle. "If you've relied on guide dogs throughout your life," she looked toward Atlas, "why did Atlas completely ignore every command you claimed you gave him during training?" Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time that morning, she had no rehearsed answer. And Atlas quietly sat beside Michael, unaware that his calm obedience had just become the strongest witness in the courtroom. Atlas remained perfectly still, His eyes stayed on Michael, waiting patiently for the next command. Not once did he bark. Not once did he lunge. Not once did he show even the slightest sign of aggression. The silence inside the courtroom became almost overwhelming. Judge Judy had learned something after decades on the bench. The calmest witness is often the hardest one to discredit. Karen finally found her voice. He's acting differently today. Judge Judy didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched Atlas, then she watched Karen. People under pressure often reveal more through instinct than intention. "Mr. Harris," Judge Judy asked, "explain how a certified guide dog normally greets its assigned handler." Michael nodded. If the handler gives the proper verbal cue or presents the harness correctly, the dog immediately recognizes the working relationship. The response is automatic. Years of training make it almost impossible to fake. Judge Judy looked toward Karen. "You've testified you've depended on guide dogs since birth." "Yes, so you know the standard commands." "Of course I do." Judge Judy folded her hands. "Good," she turned to the bailiff. "Please hand Ms. Whitmore Atlas's working harness." The bailiff carefully brought the harness to Karen. Karen reached out awkwardly. She fumbled with the straps for several seconds before finally taking hold of it. Michael quietly lowered his eyes. Judge Judy noticed. "You seem concerned, Mr. Harris." "I've never seen a blind handler hold a guide harness that way." Karen immediately snapped back. "Every person is different," Judge Judy calmly nodded. "They are, but training standards aren't." The courtroom grew still once more. Judge Judy spoke in the same calm tone that had slowly dismantled Karen's confidence all morning. "Ms. Whitmore." "Yes?" "Please give Atlas the command you normally use before walking." Karen hesitated, then she cleared her throat. "Come." Atlas didn't move. She tried again. "Let's go." Nothing. The Labrador continued sitting calmly beside Michael, never taking his eyes off his trainer. Karen forced a laugh. "Maybe he's distracted." Michael shook his head. "No, ma'am." Judge Judy looked at him. "Explain." Atlas isn't confused. He simply doesn't recognize her as someone who has ever handled him correctly. The courtroom stirred. Karen quickly raised her voice. "That's ridiculous. Dogs forget people." Michael answered respectfully. "They can, but they don't forget working patterns." Judge Judy leaned slightly forward. "So, if Miss Whitmore completed weeks of guide training with Atlas," Michael finished her thought, "he should have responded immediately." Judge Judy nodded once. "That's what I thought." Karen's breathing quickened. "This proves nothing." Judge Judy remained composed. "Perhaps not." She reached for another document in the evidence folder. "This does." Karen stared as Judge Judy unfolded a certified evaluation report signed by 2 independent mobility instructors. "I requested these records before today's hearing," Judge Judy said. The instructors who observed the sessions noted repeated inconsistencies. She began reading. Client failed to maintain standard cane technique. Client visually anticipated obstacles before verbal instruction. Client repeatedly attempted eye contact during silent exercises. Recommendation: suspend certification pending medical verification. The courtroom fell silent. Karen slowly shook her head. They were mistaken. Judge Judy turned another page. There were 2 instructors. Karen swallowed. They both misunderstood. There was also video. Karen froze. For the first time all morning, real panic appeared before the biggest reveal. Tell us in the comments, when did you first begin to doubt Karen's story? Or simply comment justice if you think the truth is finally catching up. Judge Judy allowed the room to settle before speaking again. "Miss Whitmore?" Karen looked up with trembling lips. "You claimed everyone else was wrong. The trainer, the evaluators, the paperwork, the dog." She paused. "That's a very large number of people, and one very well-trained animal, to all be mistaken about exactly the same thing." Karen couldn't answer. Judge Judy turned toward the court technician. "Please load the evaluation footage." The monitor flickered to life. A paused video appeared on the screen. Karen stood frozen in the first frame, holding Atlas's harness. Judge Judy rested one finger near the play button. The courtroom leaned forward in complete silence. Karen's confident performance had brought her this far. The next few seconds of video would determine whether it survived at all. Judge Judy looked at the frozen frame on the courtroom monitor for several long seconds. She didn't rush to press play. Timing matters in a courtroom. People expecting a dramatic confrontation often overlook the quiet moments that matter most. Karen couldn't take her eyes off the screen. The woman who had confidently declared she had been blind since birth was now staring directly at the paused image. Judge Judy noticed. She said nothing. The courtroom technician waited for instructions. "So," Judge Judy said calmly, "this is the evaluation session conducted by two independent mobility specialists." "Yes, Your Honor," Michael replied. "The recording has never been edited?" "No." Judge Judy nodded once. "Play it." The video began. Atlas stood calmly beside Karen, wearing his guide harness. The first few minutes appeared routine. Karen held the harness awkwardly. She gave inconsistent commands. Atlas repeatedly paused. Waiting for proper direction, Judge Judy watched without interruption. Then the evaluator's voice could be heard. "Please continue toward the orange cone." Karen began walking. Halfway across the room, something unexpected happened. One of the evaluators accidentally dropped a clipboard. The loud clatter echoed through the training center. Several people in the courtroom instinctively looked toward the monitor. On the screen, Karen immediately turned her head toward the falling clipboard. Not just her head, her eyes. She tracked it from the moment it slipped until it struck the floor. The video stopped. The courtroom became completely silent. Judge Judy didn't have to explain what everyone had just seen. The footage spoke for itself. Karen's shoulders slumped. "It was instinct," she whispered. Judge Judy folded her hands. Instinct doesn't allow someone born completely blind to visually follow a falling object. Karen searched desperately for another explanation. I sensed where it was." Judge Judy remained composed. "So you sensed its exact path through the air?" Karen couldn't answer. Truth doesn't collapse all at once. It falls one excuse at a time. Judge Judy nodded toward the technician. "Continue." The video resumed. Minutes later, another evaluator quietly rolled a bright blue training ball across the room. Atlas ignored it completely, remaining focused on his task. Karen didn't. Her eyes followed the ball until it disappeared behind a chair. Michael lowered his head. The gallery murmured softly. Judge Judy raised one hand. Silence immediately returned. Then came the final recording. A close-up camera positioned near the exit door showed Karen leaving the training center after the evaluation. She believed the session had ended. She believed no one was watching. As she walked toward the parking lot, she removed her sunglasses, folded her white cane, looked directly at her car, pressed the key fob, watched the headlights flash, and walked straight toward the driver's door without hesitation. The video ended. No one spoke. Karen slowly covered her face with both hands. Tears slipped through her fingers. Not because Judge Judy had embarrassed her, because the performance was over. Judge Judy reached for the final document. A report from the State Motor Vehicle Agency. She held it briefly. According to these records, Ms. Whitmore currently possesses an unrestricted driver's license issued 3 years ago. Karen closed her eyes. Judge Judy continued. The vision examination required for that license was successfully completed. The contradiction was undeniable. You told this court you have been completely blind since birth. Karen nodded weakly. I know. You filed for damages based on that claim. Another quiet nod. You accused Mr. Harris of exploiting your disability. Karen's voice trembled. I know. Judge Judy looked at her steadily. Why? Karen struggled to speak. Finally, the words came. I was drowning in debt. The courtroom listened in silence. I thought if I claimed the dog failed, I could recover the money. She paused, tears falling freely now. Then I had to keep lying. Judge Judy didn't celebrate the confession. She simply let it settle over the room because the truth had finally arrived: the old leash, the training notebook, the photograph. Atlas's flawless behavior, the evaluation footage, the driver's license. Each piece of evidence had built upon the last until there was nowhere left for deception to hide. Judge Judy closed the evidence folder. "I've heard enough." Karen lowered her head. She already knew the verdict would not be about the dog. It would be about the lie that had nearly destroyed an honest man's reputation. The courtroom remained silent. No one celebrated. No one whispered. Karen sat motionless, her folded white cane resting on the table beside her sunglasses. The props that had helped build her story now seemed strangely ordinary. Judge Judy looked at Karen for several long moments before speaking. "You understand," she said calmly, "that pretending to have a disability isn't just dishonest." Karen nodded weakly. "Yes. It damages the credibility of people who genuinely depend on accommodations every single day." Karen lowered her head even further. "I know." Judge Judy's voice remained steady. "Do you?" Another long silence. "I do now." The narrator watched the courtroom carefully. What had begun as a dispute over a service dog had become something much larger. It had become a reminder that every false claim makes life harder for those who truly need help. Judge Judy reviewed the evidence one final time. The training records were consistent. The independent evaluations were consistent. The video evidence was consistent. The state licensing records contradicted your sworn testimony. And finally, she glanced toward Atlas. The dog behaved exactly as a professionally trained guide dog should. Atlas remained quietly beside Michael. He had never barked, never reacted, never defended himself. His training had spoken louder than any witness. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Mr. Harris, yes, Your Honor. The evidence overwhelmingly supports your account." Michael nodded respectfully. Judge Judy turned back to Karen. "You falsely accused this man of negligence. You sought compensation based on a claim that the evidence simply does not support. You also made sworn statements that were directly contradicted by objective evidence." Karen quietly wiped away another tear. "I'm ashamed," Judge Judy answered without anger. "I hope so." She paused before delivering her ruling. Judgment is entered in favor of Mr. Michael Harris. A quiet wave of relief passed through the courtroom. Judge Judy continued. "Your request for damages is denied. You are ordered to reimburse the documented training fees and court costs supported by the evidence." She placed the file neatly on the bench. Copies of today's exhibits, including the evaluation recordings and sworn testimony, will remain part of the court record. Karen closed her eyes. She understood that the financial judgment was only part of the consequence. Her credibility had collapsed under oath. Judge Judy looked directly at her one last time. Then she delivered the words that no one present would forget. The quickest way to lose a judge's trust is to ask for sympathy built on a lie. The sentence hung in the air. No one moved. Even Karen seemed unable to respond. Michael slowly reached down and clipped Atlas's leash onto the dog's harness. As they prepared to leave, Judge Judy called out one final time, "Mr. Harris." He turned. "You've trained that dog well." Michael smiled for the first time all morning. "Thank you, Your Honor." He gently patted Atlas's shoulder. "The credit belongs to him." The courtroom doors opened. Atlas calmly walked beside Michael, guiding him through the hallway exactly as he had been trained to do. Several people in the gallery watched them leave, not because they had witnessed an extraordinary trick. Because they had witnessed extraordinary discipline, Karen remained seated until the room had nearly emptied. Finally, she picked up the sunglasses she no longer had a reason to wear. She folded the white cane. This time, there was no performance, only quiet regret. The narrator offered one final reflection. Trust takes years to build. One lie can destroy it in minutes. Real courage is not pretending to be someone you're not. It is facing the truth before the evidence forces you to. If this story reminded you that honesty always matters, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more unforgettable courtroom stories, and share it with someone who believes integrity is worth protecting. Then leave a comment below telling us the exact moment you realized Karen's story was beginning to fall apart.